So when we are talking about the unit circle today, a couple of things that I want you to know is that every point on the unit circle is cosine of theta, sine of theta, meaning the angle that's created right here. All right? And what it does is it takes the point 1, 0 and rotates it to any given point on the graph. All right? And we're going to use this information to find different points on this graph right here. All right? So the first thing that we have is what is the coordinates? So what are the coordinates? Your x, y of the image of 1, 0 under a rotation of 50 degrees. Like your alphabet, your coordinate is x, y. How many of you noticed that x, y is alphabetical? Did you guys notice that? X, y, it's alphabetical? Did you ever notice that before? I know you guys know it's x, y, but did you guys notice it was alphabetical? Good. That hopefully will help you to remember that it's cosine, sine, alphabetical. C comes before S. So your cosine is going to be your x value. Your sine is going to be that y value. All right? So when we go to find, we're taking this point, your 1, 0, and we're rotating it 50 degrees. So here I have this. I'm taking the point, my 1, 0, and I'm rotating it 50 degrees, so about right there. And I'm finding this point right there, is what I'm doing. So the first, your x coordinate is what value? Is it sine or cosine? It's cosine. So we're going to find the cosine of 50, sine of 50. That's going to be our, so pick your calculator up and punch in cos of 50 and get an answer. So we have our cosine is 0.64. Our sine of 50 is that 0.77. So that point right there is 0.64, comma 0.77. The other thing I can say is cosine of 50 is 0.64. The sine of 50 is 0.77. All right? Yes?
Why, you use 50 because you're rotating 50.
Yes. So whatever is there is what we're going to use. Yep. All right. Questions on that first thing? All right. Next, we are going to use the unit circle to find the following values. So the first one is sine of 270. So I'm going to draw my x and y axes. I'm going to draw 270. So with me up here, just look up the front first and then you can draw it. How much did I go right there? 90. Then what?
180.
And then 270. So I'm going to wait until you draw that on your paper. And then look up here when you have it. What point is this right here? What point is that? So your x value is 0 and -1. They're always going to be 1 unit out because that's how we get the unit circle, because it's 1 unit out. So this is 0, -1. So 0, negative 1. So sine of 270 is what?
Negative 1.
Is negative 1, because this is the cosine, this is the sine. Remember, this is your cosine, that's your sine. So it is negative 1. Bless you. Yes? Alright. Eyes up here now. If I go again, it's positive, so positive direction is this way, right? So if I go to here, it's 90, and then 180, 270, 360. So every time I go around the circle, it's 360. So in your calculator, or in your head, you can take your 810 and subtract 360. So you have your 810, and I'm going to subtract my 360, and I get 450. Can I go again? Yep. So I can go again. Now I'm going to subtract 360, and I get 90. Right? So now I'm taking and finding 90. So I'm here, I went around again, and now I can go right here to 90. What is this coordinate?
0, 1.
So we have our 0 and 1. My first value is cosine or sine? Cosine. And I want cosine of this, so my cosine is 0. So cosine of 810 is 0. You are going to eventually have to do it without a calculator, but today we're still learning, so I just want you to see that what I'm telling you is correct. So if I punch in cosine of 810, it is 0. Alright. Sine of negative 450. It's negative direction, so which way am I going to go? Am I going to go up or down?
Down.
Down, very good. So this now is my negative 90, and then I'm going to keep going around. So when I have it, I personally, what I do is I go negative 450, and then I add 360, so it will be going down in value. So I went around, I have a negative 90 left, so I have it right here. So this coordinate again, class, is 0, negative 1. So sine of this is negative 1. Because this is my cosine, that's my sine. Alright. Anybody not have this? Alright, on the back side, I just want to write a couple of things before, just to keep our space. On the back side, I'm going to draw, when we do the exact triangles, those exact values, the ones that we drew at the beginning of the hour, you always want to draw them to your X and Y, or your X axes. It's always going to come down to that X axis, and we'll use these for our, I look at it as a bow tie. Hopefully you guys see that bow tie. If you had an angle like on 135, you would draw your 135, and you always would come down to here. On this side, you will use 180 to either add or subtract. On this side, you always use 360. And once we do it, a couple of them, hopefully you'll see what I mean by that. Alright. Anybody not have this? Alright. So I have the rotation of 135, I want the coordinates exactly. The word exactly means you're going to be using no decimals. You're going to be using those triangles that we drew earlier, these guys. Right? One of those. Or it'll fall on the unit circle itself. So the first thing I want to do is to draw my axes. 135, what quadrant does it fall in? First, second, or third?
First.
So remember, this is from 0 to 90. Is it 0 to 90? No, it's bigger than 90, right? So it actually will fall in that second, because this is first, so it'll be in the second. And it doesn't have to, it's not an exact science. I don't want it to be perfect. We're just using it to draw our triangle. We're using the axes to find out negative and positive, and to find out the cosine and sine of those values. All right? So the first thing that we have to do is we have to figure out what is that right there. What angle is it? From here to here, it is how much?
135.
135. From here all the way to here is how much? 180. So how can I find out this?
180 minus 1.
180 minus my 135. So take 180 minus my 135. And I get a 45. So that means this right there is a 45, and that's a 45. What are my legs of my 45s? Ones. What is my hypotenuse?
X times square root of 2.
So square root of 2. We only use that x factor when we're solving it out, so when we're doing the exact values, we won't. So we have 1 square root of 2. Everyone with me so far, where we're at? The last thing before we're going to find our cosine and sine is we have to figure out which one is positive and which one's negative, or both of them could be. So, looking at our x and y axis, is this one positive or negative? Negative. Is this positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. Does everyone understand how we got the positive and negative?
Why is it negative?
So, thinking about it as a point, this point right here, is this, did you get it? Okay. This is positive because the y value is positive. Alright, so now we have to find our, what comes first, cosine or sine?
Cosine.
Cosine. Cosine, and I'm just going to write theta just for saving a spot, and then sine of my theta, which is that 135. So, we have Sally could tell Oscar had a hat on always. So, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So I have adjacent, so I have negative 1 over square root of 2. Adjacent over hypotenuse. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so it is 1 over square root of 2. Can I leave square roots on the bottom?
No.
No. What do I have to multiply the top and bottom by on both of them?
Square root of 2.
Square root of 2. So I'm going to go square root of 2 on both of them. So this one is negative square root of 2 over 2. On this one, we have square root of 2 over 2. Yes, no? Alright. Anybody not have it? Alright, 240. What quadrant are we in when we do our 240? Third, because we're here. From here to here is my 90, 180, 240. What axis do I go to, the X or my Y, when I'm drawing my other line? Always to your X, to part of that bow tie. You're always going to be to the X. To find this angle, what am I going to do? 280 So remember, what is it from here to here? 240. Sorry, I said 280. 240. So we're going to take our 240 and we're going to subtract our 180. We're going to subtract this part because we only want to know what that part is. So we're going to take this and we're going to subtract our 180. And it gives me a 60. I personally, how I have memorized it, you guys will learn a different way or however you want to do it. I always put my 30 in because I know touching the 30 is the square root of 3. Across from the 30 is my 1, and my hypotenuse is 2. You must memorize that. It's something that you have to do. And probably by Friday, you need to have those two triangles memorized, if you don't already. Next, before you figure it out, you must figure out, am I talking negative or positive? Is this positive or negative?
Negative.
It is negative. What about this one? This is also my negative. Yes?
Wouldn't the 1 and the negative 3 be switched since, like...
So this is a 60. So the 60... across from the 60 square root of 3, I always do my 30, so what I always do, just because that's how I do it, that's how I have it memorized. So 30 is here, that means square root of 3 is here. Across from my 30 is always the 1. Alright. Alright, yes.
So is the hypotenuse always positive?
Always positive. Yeah. Other questions? Alright, so now remember we're still finding, we're finding the cosine of your 240, the sine of 240, but we're doing it exactly, but that's what we're doing. So, our cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So, we have negative 1 over 2. Sine of 240 is opposite over hypotenuse. So I have a negative square root of 3 over 2. So I could ask you, what is the cosine of 240? And you could say it's negative 1/2. I could say the sine of 240, and we have the negative square root of 3 over 2. Yes? The hypotenuse will always be positive. Always positive. Yep. And so the hypotenuse will always be positive. Yep. Questions? Alright,